Welcome back. Today we're working on the 763 again with the Kubota engine. And these Kubota engines, they got a few places where they tend to leak oil, and it's more annoying than a big problem, you know what I mean? The three main places that you will find these engines leaking that are more common than other areas is the valve cover gasket, which is easy to do. The throttle control plate, which we're going to look at right now, and then the throttle stop plate. So that's three places that tend to leak oil on these engines. So we'll get a closer look at the throttle control plate here in just a second. But what we're going to need is just one little O-ring is all that does that. And then this is a friction plate. And you don't have to replace the friction plate, but if you're going to go try to get the correct O-ring to seal it, just get a new friction plate. We'll see how that works here in just a second. So let's get over to the machine. Okay, when coming up to the engine, right here is where we're talking about. This is the throttle control plate. Some people call it the governor, but this is technically a throttle control plate that controls the governor. And you can see right around the shaft seal, this is where we get most of the leaking. And all it is that O-ring, and then you can see the friction plate underneath there. And it's double nutted, so we're going to pull the top nut off, and then we're going to back the bottom nut up to the top. I'm going to use a hammer and a punch to drive that out of this control lever. I'm also going to remove this control lever as well. You know, this shaft is going to be keyed, so that's why I leave one nut on there, because we hit that on the top with a punch. You know, we don't want to damage the threads, or we want to be able to back that nut off to clean up, you know, if we do damage the threads a little bit. But it's usually not a problem, and it's going to take a good hit with your hammer and punch. It's usually kind of seized in there. So let's get this off. We're going to back these nuts off and tap it out. Okay, we're going to use a 7/16 and a 3/8 wrench. 3/8 on top and 7/16 on the bottom of this little control rod. And just set it off to the side. Now we need to back these off with the 12mm. And it's a jam nut, because we're going to use that jam nut to set our friction on that friction plate underneath. And I'll show you that when we get to that. But so I got the top nut off, and I'm going to back this other nut up. Yep, almost to the top. Yep, that's good right there. Okay, now we're going to take a hammer and punch, and we're going to hit it real hard right on top of that. Now, your shaft's not going to fall down in the engine or anything, so don't worry about that. All we got to do is just, like I said, because it's keyed inside this throttle lever, so we just got to punch that out and pull our lever up. That one popped right out. Like I said, I'm really surprised, because usually you really gotta hit these really hard. I'll take my top nut off. Washer, and then using my pry bar, we'll try to get this the rest of the way off of there. Okay, and there's our throttle shaft, and then right here's the key. And just pull that out with a pair of needle nose pliers. Then here's the friction plate, again using my pry bar. There's the old friction plate. Okay. Before I pull this O-ring out, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit with some brake clean. And then use my pick to pull the O-ring off the shaft there. And there's the old one. And now it's ready to go back together. Here's our new O-ring. Slide it down over the shaft. And then just using my punch or something flat to push the O-ring down in the groove. Now that I've got the O-ring pushed in there, now it's time for our new friction plate. Slide it over the top. Okay, put the keyway back in. And now we're ready to install our throttle control lever. Okay, washer, and our first nut. Then we'll install our nut by hand. So I run it down tight and then back it off a little bit. Just until it starts to spring back by itself. We got to make sure we've got enough tension on that O-ring below it to seal it as well. Okay, that's kind of a feel thing. But when you're there, you're there. Then we're going to put our top jam nut on. And after you run the jam nut down, check it again. Make sure you got plenty of spring action there. Perfect. So now we'll just hook up our throttle control rod. So that was our throttle control lever shaft seal that we just did there, and that's one of the most common places it leaks. And like I said, the valve cover being the other, and this throttle stop plate right here. And that's what we're going to look at in the next video. But yeah, you know, and that's not the only way to do it, but that's just how I did it. And I've done a lot of them. So yeah, we're going to fire it up, warm it up, and just double check it for leaks. And yeah, move on to the next one. Thanks for watching.